for joining us on episode 24 of the Ethereal Podcast. We are your hosts, Dom and Sage. Today, we've got an awesome guest from Florida. She was our tour guide on our haunted pub crawl. She is a mother, she is an artist, and she has an epic story to share with you guys today about her DMT experience. So we've got Miss Deborah Richardson joining us today.
Oh, my mom would be so proud that I'm on a podcast. Tell her hey,
Mom! You have to send her the link now. You have to.
Yeah, just to that part.
Oh, God.
My mama would be so proud.
She's like, wow, she's famous.
Oh my God.
The funny part is my DMT trip was actually like, my mom was very, very strict, like very strict mom. And I knew that, you know, drugs were off limits. Like my mom's never had a drop of alcohol in her life. She's never smoked anything in her life.
Oh, that's
literally, like I got kicked out of the house at 18, like right after I turned 18 for my first tattoo that no one could see. And she found out that I was having sex. And so like my mom is
okay.
But
like by the rule book.
My DMT experience was so profound that I called her up and was like, hey mom, I gotta tell you.
No way. No way.
You're like, look, I really have to share.
I did. I had to tell her. And my mom was like, and my mom's a nurse too, mind you. And so my mom listened to it all and everything. And then the next day she called me and she's like, Deborah, I'm glad that, you know, you shared this story with me or whatever. She goes, but I'm not at the same time. Cause I looked up DMT and you know,
She said, I did some research and kind of
that sounds exactly like my mom.
I was imagining you calling your mom after like a profound trip. I was just imagining that process of her looking it up like.
Well, that was me a couple months ago telling my mom about how microdosing mushrooms has changed my life. And she's like, I don't agree with your methods of healing. It's like, okay.
You're like, all right, well, I'll share.
Yeah. So my mom, she was like, I don't want to hear about it ever again. She goes, you know, I understand that you might do it again, but I just can't handle hearing it because I'm going to worry about you. And I was like, oh, okay. And hi. Here I am.
I can relate.
Oh, my story.
You can never
Anyway.
tell her again, but you get to tell the world through our podcast.
Oh, a few months later, I got kicked out of the entire family for smoking weed. So now it's just like, hey mom, I'm going to piss you off.
I love it.
Yes,
Love it. That is
But
amazing.
anyways, on to the DMT story. So
So
yeah,
I love how I just have to let everybody know that, you know, we had you to ourselves for our haunted pub crawl. So it was just me and Saige, Brittany, and our other friend Riley. And we got, you know, all of course got very drunk and very close.
not me. I was working.
No, you were
She was
sober,
working, a working woman.
sober, working. The four of us were
Got
obviously toasted. I took that double shot at the bar, and then that's when you started telling me. your story.
That was like when I saw your eyes, like you were looking at me, but your brain, it was.
But at the same time, my drunk me was like, we need to have her on the podcast. This is like amazing.
I remember us talking about, we're gonna do that drunk as hell at the bar. We're like, we're gonna do that.
Yeah, no, I remember you saying that, like, oh, we got to do this, but you were like, oh, we're gonna have to hear it again because, like, I remember. I was listening and I was absorbing, but I wasn't absorbing. Like,
I knew the key parts. I knew the key parts of the story, and that was about all that I remember.
Yeah, like I had the keynotes.
But I think everything happened the way it was supposed to, and I'm glad that we met.
Sure.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Me too. Yeah. So you know, before my DMT trip, and I think this is a big contributing factor, at least for me, it was the fact that I had never really done psychedelics before. Right. I had done mushrooms twice, and those times it was the one time I took enough to just giggle, and another time I took enough to have a bit of visuals, but I never really dove deep into any psychedelics or anything. I never taken really any drugs before. Right. And I don't even consider DMT a drug. But anyways, my boyfriend now, back then, this was damn near 4 years ago, he called me, or he texted me, and he said, hey, I got some DMT, would you be interested in doing it with me? And I was like, what's DMT? Like, I had never even,
I
can't fathom.
Like, I can't imagine my partner coming and be like, hey, let's do some DMT. I had never done psychedelics, and just like,
literally,
because like, I feel like for the entire time that I've been doing drugs, I've always known that DMT was like
a crazy, like a
big one.
Yeah. And I was always like, almost like afraid.
Very afraid.
So like,
yeah, I had never even heard of it before. And he goes, do some, do your own research on it and everything. Because he was big, even with mushrooms. So like, you do your own research about it. You need to feel comfortable. You need to be in the right headspace, all that kind of stuff. Because obviously he's had a lot of experiences. And so I was like, okay. So I was at home and, started researching it and started watching all these videos of people who had done it or had done it a lot of times, and, what their experiences were, and kind of it like seemed to follow a very similar path for a lot of people. Like it was, very similar experience almost in a way, but very unique to them as well.
Right.
And so, one of the big things that I remember seeing over and over again was they'd said that, if you had a really traumatic childhood, that if you broke through on DMT, that you could have a traumatic experience, or it would be a very hard experience. And that, it was really hard to go through or deal with or whatever, but at the end of it, that it was extremely healing and therapeutic, and people were able to work through some things that they were never able to work through previously, even for years of counseling or anything. And so I was like, well, I know I'm fucked up. So I was like,
she said, I'll do the test, dummy.
Yeah.
Give it a go.
Well, it was kind of one of those things that it was like, I was in a place in my life. I was like, fuck it. Like, it couldn't hurt, and
right.
it only lasts a short amount of period of time. And it's not, I knew it was somewhere that you went in your head. It wasn't like, you were doing all these physical things, or at least that's the research that I had gotten. I do know that some people have physical reactions to things, but I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. So the next day I came down, and he'd done his research on it too, and he'd never tried it before either. But he went to go do it first, and he kept on seeing the waiting room, but he couldn't get past the waiting room. And I mean, he kept taking hit after hit after hit. He could not get past the waiting room. Wow. And so we're both kind of sitting there like very underwhelmed already, by the experience. But I was like, I truly did not know what to expect, except for that I could be facing very difficult things from my childhood, and so and he was like, okay, well, let's let you give it a try. And sure as shit, it worked for me.
But it was time.
That first hit, I started feeling good. And the second one, I was really feeling good. And that third one, he had to take the pipe away from me, because I was already just like melting into the bed. And one of the things I had said to him beforehand, because I was very nervous, I was nervous about what I was going to have to face, knowing that a lot of my childhood I had blacked out. Like I don't remember large pieces of my childhood because it was very traumatic.
Right.
And so I was very nervous. And so before, I had taken the hit, I had asked him, hold on to my hand. Like, even if I don't register it, somewhere in the back of my head, I will know that someone is holding on to me, that I'm grounded, basically. I needed that. And so he did. And it was funny because as I was sinking down into the bed, like he went to go move and come around to the other side of me. But like I grabbed him and was like, don't you fucking move. Like, you're staying right here. Cause I was right at that threshold of being gone. And so he stayed there. And then, I closed my eyes and I could feel my physical body just sinking into the bed. And I was like, oh, this feels Right. And then all of a sudden it was just pitch black. And then I looked up and it was like I was in a snow globe and it was all black, but I looked up and I saw this gray paint pouring over me. And as it was coming down around the globe, it was breaking up into fractals and all sorts of different geometrical, it was stunning. And I remember just standing there being like, oh my God, like some shit. If this is the beginning, like, okay. So, it came down and like, I remember even watching it go around my hand. And so like my hand was outside of the globe, and it was still attached to him, but like, it just was like very accepting of it. It was like, okay, you need that safety net. We're going to let you have it. And then I remember seeing the window pop up in front of me, but like, it was like kind of dancing around in my peripheral vision. And I kept on trying to look at it, And the voices were like, hey, just enjoy where you're at. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay. So I started looking around more, and all the gray paint, it turned to all these different colors, and they're just beautiful and vibrant, bright colors. And then the second I like just get completely comfortable in that waiting room, that's when the window came right smack in front of my face. Like it was right there, and it was like, okay. And the second I looked through that window, I shot off through it, and I was flying. And I mean, it really was like a portal to a different dimension. And and I don't even, it was funny because I had sent you that video of myself the next day, and I went through multiple dimensions, and I still don't remember all of them, but the ones that I do remember, I shot off, and I went through a couple of them, and I just remember hearing this beautiful music that could never be replicated. Like it was so beautiful. It was just, I don't even know how to, a lot of me explaining this doesn't even do the trip justice, because there are not human words to describe the experience,
Right.
And so anyways, as I was going through, I remember hitting one dimension, and I saw, it was like a Ferris wheel is the best way to explain it. But like on each end, there was hundreds of little round dots, and it was like, it was a different planet and a different this. And so I saw thousands of them all together, but it was thousands of them. And then it like zoomed in on not on each one, but on a lot of them. And it like showed me these little snippets of a moment in time on these different planets. And it was myself, it was me. And it was me living on all these different lives. And in each one of them, I was happy, and I was loved, and I was beyond happy. I mean, it was so weird because they were all so different, but I could recognize myself in them. And, it was, they were all very different worlds. One was spaceships and high towers floating, and others was farmland, and back like what we would call in the Renaissance ages, and like
different periods of time, like
different periods of time. That's so
cool. And like even I remember seeing one or two that I'm like, am I a fucking animal? Like I'm an animal in a different, like there was animals like it, but or maybe they were, I don't know, alien form. Anyways, it was
your consciousness.
You're like,
it was me. And yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Cool. That's so cool.
And, and the voices are telling me, and it was very sweet because before my DMT experience, I had truly never experienced unconditional love. Well, let me back that up. I had, but only by a dog, actually, a dog that I'd had that was a life-changing dog. But that was the only what I had ever experienced, but I never got it from my parents. I had never gotten it from grandparents or siblings or anything. I mean, I didn't have family in that sense.
Right.
And so the voices tell me, they're like, hey, you may have not gotten the love in this lifetime that you're living now, but you get it in every other lifetime. Someone truly loves you.
Powerful.
And I was just like, okay, like
like the little child inside of you was like, all right, I'm loved, and just sobbed.
well, it was such an overwhelming and beautiful feeling that it's like, because I now knew this, no matter what happened in this lifetime, I was like, I have millions other to look forward to. Like I'm, but it isn't, and let me even clarify that. It wasn't me that was unlovable.
Right.
I just got the shitty people in this life.
Mm-hmm.
But me was in fact lovable in all these other lives. And so it was a very profound thing for me.
Right.
And it was beautiful. And then I remember, going through a few different dimensions, and it was like, and they're just, they're in the background, and they're just, the voices are being so loving and so comforting. And it was just like this, you said the perfect word last time, but I can't remember what it was, but it was like a energy of, they were just filling me with love and peace and happiness and purity.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incredible. And then one of the last dimensions that I went through, I saw, well, something like that, not exactly that, but I saw this beautiful flower that was mechanical in a way, but also never ending, and it was just eternal, and it just kept going,
holding into it.
Yeah, it was like it was constantly coming forward, but constantly moving back. It was eternity was what it was. FYI. Yeah, there's a show on Netflix, and it's explaining eternity. That's the best way to explain it. The best way. Watch it highly. When Dawn and I watched it the other night, and I was like, they just explained what that was, like how it moved.
It was like one of those
crazy
moments.
Yeah. So anyways, I saw it, and it was just, I remember I was like floating in space, and just like my chest was being pulled forward. And as I was going forward, it told me not to give up hope of having a family. Now, mind you, at the time, I had now been infertile for 13 years.
Right. And you were like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like 10 years where, we were trying. I went on special diets. We did fertility treatments, all sorts of things. I had gotten pregnant, but I had miscarried very early on. And it was this thing, and being adopted, and having family issues and all that stuff. Like having a family was very, very important to me.
Right.
And so, but I was 33 at this time, and I had just come to terms with it wasn't going to happen for me, and that was okay. It was what it was. And so, but DMT, the voices said, don't give up hope of having your own family. And I was like, okay, like that was probably the only part that I was like, oh, I am on drugs. So
you're like, well, let's remember that.
He said, okay, I want to believe you, but all the evidence, girly, it kind of adds up.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'm not going to put too much. And the reason why I didn't want to put too much weight into it, though, is because I didn't want to have my hopes.
Yeah.
Because those last 3 years, after I left my ex-husband, and I was still obviously infertile, but like I, wasn't trying anymore or whatever. But in those 3 years, I'd really just tried to come to terms with not doing it. It was still hard. I mean, infertility, it for a woman, I think it is literally one of the hardest things in the world to deal with. You truly want to try. It is soul crushing. It's a hard thing. So anyways, that's why I didn't want to get my hopes up, but it said, don't give up hope for it. And I was like, okay. And then, I kept floating towards that image, and as I got closer and closer, it was just like, my body was being filled with nothing but pure love and happiness. And it was pure. And most of the time love comes with strings attached, and it comes with this, with that. And you have to be this way. You have to be that way. You can't do this. You can do this. But on DMT, it wasn't that way. It was, no, we truly love you as a soul. Like, you are perfect in the way that you are. You are meant to be this way, and all of it. And so it was confirming in a lot of ways of that I was worthy of love, that, all this other stuff. But I remember floating towards the image, and as I got closer, I kind of went through the center of it, and it was they said, okay, it's time to go back now. And I just woke up, and I was like,
wild. I have goosebumps.
yeah, I was like, what? Okay. And Don was sitting right there, and he's like, instantly, he's like, what happened? Like, you were gone. And I was like, I started crying, and I mean, I am just ugly crying, but I'm laughing the entire time.
I get that.
I told him, I was like, I need him. Like, I can't, I kept on trying to tell him that I can't talk, but I couldn't even get the talk part out. I was like, and I just laid there, and he was so patient. Like, he sat there for 30-45 minutes next to me, just waiting to hear it. And finally, I have this stupid fucking smile on my face and tears running down my face, and finally I was able to tell him, and like, I am stumbling my way through it, trying to tell him, because it was so fresh and everything, but it was like, how do I explain all these things,
Right.
And so I told him that. But it really, like, a lot of it really didn't set in until the weeks following, because you get so much information in such a short amount of time that, like, our human brains, like, while we're on it, we can process it. It's like, it's just like fucking information overload to your brain. But like, once you come back to, it's like, hey, now we have those, human limits or whatever, and you can only remember so much. And so, I thought about it the next couple of weeks, and it was just like one thing after another kept on kind of coming forward. And then I remembered about the kid thing, or the family. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to tell my mom as well. And then, I was so obsessed with this image that I was like, I have to see it again. Like, I have to see it again. And like, I didn't necessarily, I just needed to see it for my own peace of mind, I guess. And so I started painting, and I never painted a day in my life before. And all of a sudden it was like, I started painting, and it was like I unlocked a new level, and it was like, oh my God, here's my passion. A passion. I never had a passion before, ever. And the second I started painting this, it was like, oh my God, like, I'm meant to paint. Like, this is how I get me out. Like, this is how I get me out and express myself, so that others can understand it or see it or whatever, and not all are going to understand it or see it or whatever it might be. And that's okay. But mostly it's like, I can get these overwhelming, good, bad, sad, whatever feelings out.
Right.
And see them in a visual way.
Right.
Exactly. Because it's so hard to translate them into words. And I actually saw this video the other day, and it was like, or it wasn't even a video, it was just a post, but it was, if you try to describe God, simply put, too many words get in the way. Like, and that's how it was with your DMT experience. You try to describe it, but too many words get in the way, and so you had to paint it, and like, that's beautiful. That's really
beautiful. So it's obviously now become a big passion of mine, and when Dawn and I ended up moving in together, well, I'll back up a little bit. So after we did the DMT and everything, again, he didn't really experience anything, and he was a little jealous that I got to, and he didn't, and because he was the one with a goal in mind, but I got into it, was like, I'm already fucked up, show me what you want. Like,
that's how you're supposed to go into it. I feel like
the no expectations is like the universe is like, all right,
well, and you have to give over control. Like, you have to give them control of your mind, basically, to be open enough to see what they want to show you. And it was the other thing was, it was so surprising that it was such a loving and pure experience for me, but at the same time, it was like, they knew I needed that. They knew that was the approach that I needed.
Yeah, you needed that soft, gentle, healing, good feeling kind of trip.
Yeah.
And I feel like the ones that grew up in that good feeling safe zone their whole lives, those are more so some of the ones that end up having a more abrasive, traumatic type of awakening, because that's what they needed, but that's the opposite of what you needed, kind of thing. Everybody's different.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the weeks following, I told Dawn about the whole kid thing, and mind you, I was 33, he was 32 at the time, and he was kind of at a weird stage in his life, and so this dumbass decides to break it off with me. And because he didn't want to hold me back from having a family, and he genuinely meant it with good intentions, but I knew that he was meant to be mine. I knew he was, and so I was like, what the fuck?
You're just like, break my heart. Why don't you?
Like, this doesn't correlate with my plan.
Yeah, it I had been married for 10 years. And when I left my ex-husband, it was like, see you, bitch. Like, I'm good. Like, there was no tear shed.
Right.
Like, I was ready to go. And I've always been that way. Like, if you don't want me, okay, bye. Like, I'll go find someone that does, but with him, it wasn't necessarily that way, but it was devastating. And so I did what any normal American girl would do. And I went and whored around.
Right.
I mean, you got to fill the void somewhere.
Yep. Fill that void.
That's exactly what I did. And so, it was strange though, because I was still obviously feeding after him, but the first guy that I, had found even a little bit of a connection with, we'd spent a weekend together and everything. And then we spent another weekend together. And on that second weekend, I got pregnant with my son. And I was like,
crazy.
He's just like a couple months later, 13 years of being
literally
infertile. And then the DMT was like, oh, here, by the way, you're healed now. Let me drop a babes in there.
Like, hey, you had to feel that unconditional love first.
And keep in mind, my ex-husband, we did a lot to try and have a baby, like a lot. And this guy, well, this will be permanently on the internet, and I don't want to, but anyways.
It's like whatever it was.
Not out of respect for him, out of respect for my child. But
that's fair.
It didn't take long to make my son. And I got pregnant with him, and then right after that weekend, I actually broke it off with the guy, because I was like, I'm not ready. I said, I thought he was genuinely a good guy and all of this other stuff. And I was like, I'm not ready, blah, 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 blah. I still am in love with someone else, all this other things. And then two fucking weeks later, I found out I was pregnant, and I was like, hey, just kidding. Not really, but I am in fact pregnant and all this stuff. And so, then went through a very trying time being pregnant and single and all of that other stuff. And, and then a week, I will say this, for anyone that has not experienced DMT, but has experienced childbirth, the closest feeling you can get to experiencing DMT, or at least that happiness, pure love, energy thing, is the moment they lay your child on your chest after you give birth. Like that.
That's why people get hooked on having kids. That's why people get hooked on having kids. Some people have 7 kids, and you're like, how are you doing it? It must be that. They're like, no, it
must be that moment.
People always say that, no matter how bad it is, they're like, that moment is so worth it. I'm like,
that's
well, that
what
makes
my mom
sense.
Always told me.
If you're saying that's how you compare it, it's like, oh, well, yeah, it's like that pure addictive love.
Oh, it is.
Serotonin, oxytocin, all that good chemicals.
It's all encompassing. They put him on my chest, and I was like, this. Every single second of my entire life has been completely fucking worth it for this moment alone. I would do it all a million times over again.
Wow.
And live every bit of it exactly the same to a T, just to have that moment again. And mind you, I was still heartbroken and devastated over Don, but I was like, he was even worth losing to have this, like I still loved him and I still wanted him. I was like, but I am good now. I can take on anything in this world because I have this child. And he was, the moment they're born, they're nothing but pure. They're pure love and everything. And so it was just, it was really sweet too, because he was crying and he looked up at me and I started talking to him and he immediately stopped and he looked right at me like it was a recognition of souls. And he was like, oh, okay, mama got me, I'm good. And it was just like, oh my God.
Such a fulfilling moment for you. I can't imagine, especially everything leading up to that point.
I was about to say, like,
that's really
over
beautiful.
a decade of build up.
Yeah.
You had that moment of being like, this is more than I thought it would be. Like, kind of,
that's incredible.
It really was. It was like, okay, yeah, I now know why. It doesn't necessarily explain why I had to go through the things I do, but I don't even give a shit anymore. It's like, it was worth it.
It all led
You're
up
like,
to this point.
Whatever.
Yeah, it was worth it. But then, a week after my son was born, some other things happened in life or whatever. But then Dawn and I started seeing each other again. And, we picked up right where we left off. And I told him the story and Dawn is agnostic. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't necessarily say that there isn't one. He just doesn't believe in one and all that stuff. And so, I came down and Phoenix, I think, was only 5 days old at the time, and came down and Dawn and I had dinner and, I'm telling him the whole story and everything. And he goes, honestly, he goes, after, the DMT experience and how everything is played out, he goes, I now seriously wonder. He goes, there has to be something. There has to be. He goes, because of how everything's happened. He goes, I have questioned my whole entire life now. Like he questioned it all, and then 6 months into seeing each other, I'm on birth control and I get pregnant with my daughter. And now guess what? I have my family that I have always dreamed about.
Wow, that's crazy. Within like a year. Like 2 years, maybe, like from
2 years.
It's like you get
incredible.
Crazy. Yeah, that's a lot of change, a lot of like things happening in 2 years that like it's the comparison of the 13 to 2. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
You did that much long time, but then like within 2 years, like how much like you got everything you wanted within 2 years. Whereas you would think that kind of thing would happen like slowly over time. It's like, nope. The universe gave it to you right there.
I think that's kind of a good example of like the control that we want to have over things in our lives,
like planning
and making things happen. And like you tried for so many years, and it's like the waves we were talking about on like the previous episode, where you push so hard against something. Well, while you're pushing, it can't come to you. And so it's like you gave that up, you let it go, you had your DMT experience, you let Don go and everything after he broke up with you. And when you let all of that go and you were like, okay, I'm still worthy of love no matter what.
Boom.
The universe is like, all right, here's the tidal wave.
Literally, like
bam, bam, bam. Yeah, it really was.
You're like, I can't get up.
Literally, it's like I'm underwater.
It's so funny because it happened all so fast. Like, so I mean, there was some things that immediately after Phoenix was born, I had planned on moving to Alaska, and my friend left me, and then I was left with a newborn and no money, and I was supposed to be moving out of my apartment. I'd sold off all of my baby stuff. Like, it was one thing after another. And so then all of a sudden I had to find a job and I had to get money back going. And COVID happened 2 weeks after he was born. It was a lockdown. And it was just like all these things kept happening. But for some reason, like even when a bad thing happened, it was like another bad thing would happen. But because of that bad thing, it paid for this bad thing. And it was like,
the karmic cycles were just like unfolding left and right after that. I've gone through that.
Where you're just like, okay, slow down.
I had a newborn child who I wanted to stay at home with, but I needed to go get a job. But then, they were doing all the God damn it, what's the word? The checks that they were sending out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The
employment, and I got this, and I got that. So then the universe all of a sudden provided me enough money to take care of everything for 4 months, so I could stay at home with him until he was 4 months old. And then I got a job and I found a daycare, and it was just like one thing after another. And then the funny part is like when it really started rolling in, like I really started getting all these things that I wanted. When I got pregnant with Aurora, I was like, wait, hold on, this is going too fast now,
Yeah, it's like, wait.
when life decides to fast track,
it's literally either
ready for another one, and you're just like,
it's either too fast or too slow. It's either or. Like, it's never a happy in between, dude.
And then this man that I had been chasing and wanted everything and all, like I wanted all of it. Like I was terrified of marriage, and I, wanted to take our sweet time. But now all of a sudden he's like, well, you're pregnant. Now we really need to like put effort into this. So you need to move in. And I was like, whoa, like slow down, but it was like, I didn't.
Like, I know I asked for this. However,
like I want it on my timetable, but it wasn't happening that way. And so it was just like, and I told him one night, I was like, it's just too much, too fast. Like everything is asking too much. Like I'm a person that I need my routine. I need my security. I need, but all of a sudden I wasn't given that option. It was like, no, bitch, you wanted all of it. Now you're getting it. So buckle up.
It's like, build a new routine, bitch.
Sorry, you don't have to figure it out.
So it was like, shit, but now here we are, and it's, been 3+ years since I took DMT, and I have 2 beautiful, amazing children, and the hottest man that's so intelligent that it makes him hotter. And it's like we have a phenomenal relationship, and he truly is my best friend, but like he also lets me be me and have my own space. And like,
you have your beautiful art studio.
Yeah, he built it for me. Like he put all this together for me before I moved in, so that I would have my own space.
That's awful.
Yeah. And so, it's just DMT can really fuck your world up.
She said,
way, like just, be ready. Like if you're willing to listen what it has to tell you, be ready, because it's going to come at you, and it's going to make you very, very uncomfortable. I bawled my eyes out when the last time I moved the last load of furniture or whatever from my apartment down here to Dawn's. I stopped because I was crying so hard I couldn't drive, because I was like, I don't want to move in. It was bad. It was really, I was like, fuck this dude. Like, I know I want him, but nope. Like, I know, and and it wasn't even because I didn't love him. I did love him, but it was just like, we are moving at a comfortable rate here. But because of moving at that uncomfortable rate and just being like, okay, let's fucking do it. I mean, I have a fantastic life that I never thought in 1.5 million years I would ever have. Ever. I mean,
that's so crazy.
That's so
literally my dreams come true. And like,
I love that for you. I love that this all happened to you, and I'm just so happy that we met and got to even hear your story in general. Every time I hear it gets better and better.
And I feel like it also, like, the timing of it, like with us like hearing it too was really ironic, because at the same time we were like, maybe we should do it, because we both like had experience with like microdosing DMT, but we were always like,
I'm still
scared to like do more. And so it was like, whenever we're like, maybe we shouldn't be like as scared, like maybe there is, like maybe we should like look into it like a little more, like, because it was like this fear of like doing it more is always so much, because it was like, oh, what if this is, and then it was like, I don't know, the more you hear people's like stories where you're like, you really see like what is the after effect, you're like, well,
it gives me comfort for sure hearing it.
Well, I mean, I honestly have not heard of anyone, and I could be wrong, but I have not heard of anyone taking DMT and becoming a worse person.
That's fair.
That's a fair point.
That's a very
That's
good
a fair
point.
Put that on the shirt.
And it's not that it's not that I'm scared of becoming a worse person. I think maybe it's just that I'm scared of the
Face your demons.
scariness of. I think it's just the letting go of the control.
I
is
think
the biggest part
for me, it's definitely has to do with that acid trip I had that time.
Well,
where
you
it's
had
definitely
a
like a trigger where I'm
ego
like, I'm
death,
so
kind of.
like afraid. I think there's a part of me that's like, while I've never done DMT, I did do a psychedelic like that where I physically went somewhere else. I had experience I cannot fucking explain, and it did change me to a better person, but it was really intense
and traumatic for the people around her.
And it was like, so it's like one of those things where like I know whenever I do like DMT and like a full extent, it's going to be a very like, I hate to say like medical like sense, but it probably will be. It'll be like there's like one person there that's like monitoring me, and I'm like sitting. So I'm so afraid of what could happen.
Yeah, you definitely need someone there.
It's like I have to have it. So
me too, though. Me too.
Well, that's what we did. We did dark room, nighttime, no sound, no music, no lights, no nothing. We just laid in bed. We got as comfy as possible. We were quiet, and we went into it in a very safe space. And that was the kind of thing. And since then, it's like I've never done it again yet. I mean, don't get me wrong. I get the opportunity, I'm taking that shit. But
so I'll go through the experience.
Mama's back. What do you got for me now? I think that if you go into it with one, the right intentions, but two, without any intentions, if that makes sense.
Like any expectations almost.
Yeah, any expectations. You're gonna be shown things that you're just like, fuck, okay, yeah.
I'll take this in later.
I'm ready for that. I feel like
and like I said, it might be terrifying during the experience.
Right.
You might have to deal with some shit afterwards, but it ultimately does make you a better person. I am a firm believer that everyone on this planet should have a breakthrough on DMT one time. And I think that this world would be a significantly better place.
I agree.
Well, I was gonna say they are, across the globe, all across different countries, they're doing so much, like just in the last, like, I don't know, 30 years, like the amount of research that's been going into like DMT in a medical sense has blown so much where like in my notes, I was like, obviously there's a lot of like, they talk about like it help with like PTSD and depression and anxiety and these different things, but they even have like I was doing research before, and they've found so far results have shown that DMT also like helps with people that have had strokes.
What?
Because of like how it reacts with like basically the dead like stuff in their brain, and Parkinson's.
Oh wow.
So it's like those are two where you wouldn't even imagine that would help, but like they've shown that like, hey, there's actually like the Parkinson's is in phase 2 now, proving that like it actually is helping Parkinson's.
Right.
And like with the strokes, it's like they're being blown away, where it's like there's parts of the brain that's almost like like not working, like dead, almost like dead matter. Like they're doing the DMT and they're seeing things light up, and like these things haven't lit up in them since the stroke.
Oh, that's wild.
And so they're like, how is this possible? And so they're like really starting to like break down like how healing DMT can be, and like how much it truly like affects the human like psyche compared to like before. I feel like it was so like
monumental, honestly.
Yeah, it was like they didn't really want to look at it. It's like now they're realizing like it's not just mental. For a long time I feel like what held it back was that the medical field has a lot of about mental health. It's better now, but it always was very like, oh, mental health, throw that shit. So because they only had like, oh, it helps depression and PTSD, they're like, well, it helps mental stuff. Now that they're seeing it helps stuff that's not just mental, now all of a sudden they're like, wait, let's research this.
Because like if this can fix it,
they're like, whoa, this could help more things than just the mind. So now it's like we're actually starting to get genuine research where people are like showing like these results of like, wow, like look at how this is changing like people.
Right. And New Orleans is even doing a study that they're in phase 2 right now on DMT. So like lots of places all over.
Yeah, it's like there's been a lot of like for a long time like research for like depression and like PTSD, how much it's helped. And so it's like they're only just starting to really understand like even more so like what more things it can help. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, well, they've found that, you know, psychedelics, mushrooms, DMT, all that stuff, I believe all of it will create new neural pathways. And
Yes.
that's what you're talking about.
Yes, it's like
part.
it's like for so long we said that after a certain age, that's it. You know, your brain's done growing, it's done.
That's bullshit.
And it's like, no, it's not. You can shut it down, but it still has the capacity, the same capacity as it did then. You're just not using it. And so it's like these things are helping people who've been out of doing that, you know. And so it's like you do these things in like when I did like microdosing shrooms, that period where I did that afterwards, I feel like it completely changed how I went about different things because I had that reference of like, whoa, I can do these different. I can see what else can like be done. Let's just try something a little different this time.
That part.
It's like you think about it now because you remember, oh, I can do something
do
different.
Things different. Yep.
It's like you get stuck in loops.
It opens up those new options, those new pathways that you did not have before. And so you're like, oh shit, now I have other options about it. And then it also heals broken or damaged neural pathways.
That part.
Like I told you girls, I did the heroic dose of mushrooms, and since then I have not had any issues with my childhood. None. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm just gonna take mushrooms until I am, you know, enlightened.
That's me. I started microdosing again, and I'm like, because I took a break for about a month because there were so many big life changes, and there was
I need time to
so
rest.
much to change. I need not only rest, but I needed time to just fucking integrate everything that I had learned. And like now, I find myself sober in that little like fork of, oh, I can do things the way I've always done it, or I can choose to do something differently. And like I'm doing that on a regular basis, and like every time I catch myself doing it, I'm like,
yeah,
I'm doing it.
Yeah, it's fantastic because there are certain things that, you know, I didn't know before. And I told Dawn, I was like, I didn't know that was like actually an option. Like, I didn't realize that was an option, and now I do. And so now it's like, I don't have to go down this shitty path, or this, not necessarily a shitty path, but this path of continually making not the best choices because you have the lack of choices.
Right.
But now you have those choices, and it's like, okay, well, now my life is more up to me and the path that I take. And so it gives people more of a sense of accountability for themselves, and that comes along with when you make those right decisions. It gives you more pride in yourself and more respect and more confidence in yourself to keep making those better decisions.
Right.
And so I think people just need to get fucked up on psychedelics all the time.
Like, put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I was like, people just need to get a little
tribute. T-shirt, quote Deb, like for the rest of my life. I agree with that.
Church, we're taking mushrooms on Sunday. Like that's, you know, that's gonna be
literally.
What if they had churches like that where a group of people could just go and like take mushrooms on a Sunday?
Well, actually, this is
kind
of correlates, like it's not mushrooms, but it does correlate to the DMT like stuff. Is that when I was looking into like all the DMT stuff, obviously like DMT is illegal in America or whatever the fuck, you know, of course.
In Orlando.
Come back. There are certain churches that like fought to get ayahuasca approved, and they have it approved based off of the like religious like freedom like thing. So like there are actual churches that do legally get and create like ayahuasca, and it's legal in America, but everywhere like else is supposed to be like illegal.
Okay, that's cool.
Right? I thought that was fascinating. I was like, damn, they fought that for like, it said the first time they fought it was like in the 90s. They've gone to court 3 separate times about it, and they've won every single time.
That's amazing.
Because they're like, why?
All right.
Yeah, I was like, you know what? Y'all did that.
I love it.
That's very fascinating.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us all the gold and just absolute great content. It's always a pleasure talking with you.
You too. Both of you guys have been fantastic and everything, and I can't wait to send this to my mom.
I will send it to you as soon as we have it edited.
Literally.
As soon as I get it back from our editor, you will be the first person to get the link.
Like, oh, here you go.
I love that.
Fantastic.
Let us know what she said.
It was so fucking funny.
I will if I hear back.
Yeah, if she says anything.
Yeah, for real.
If she decides to comment. But
Yeah.
all right, Deb. Well, thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Yeah, have a good one, girls.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So how about that, guys? What a story.
Literally. It's like that's the technical third time we've like basically heard it, and
Yes.
it still is just as mind blowing.
Still gives me chills all over my body every time.
Yeah, it's like still
when I hear
causes
it.
like a reaction in my body where I'm just like, wow, like honestly, every time I hear it, it makes me like there's this deep part of me that's like, I need to do this.
Yeah, same. And it's like that is like powerful.
Yes, and I'm like the fact that I'm like, no, like, I
we
need
have
this.
to keep each other accountable. We're gonna do DMT before the end of this year.
No, that works because I wanted to do it before my 27th birthday.
Okay, this is perfect before the end of the year.
Because that's my golden birthday. I've been waiting my whole life. If 27 is lame, I'm gonna be mad. I remember being 8 years old and being like,
mine was on my 19th birthday, and yeah, we're just not gonna talk about that.
Oh God. Well, anyways. On that note,
DMT, dimethyltryptamine.
Glad. Yep. I hate saying the long word.
Oh, I love saying that word. It's such a fun word to say. Dimethyltryptamine.
I used to love saying stuff. It's probably a trauma. Actually, that's probably unpacking something.
Kirsten has.
Yeah, that's probably unpacking something. Otherwise known as DMT, spirit molecule, God molecule, whatever the fuck. I'm just gonna break down some little fast facts for you. If anyone, we've talked about DMT a little bit, but since this was all about DMT, I just have some fast facts about DMT because we did talk about how wonderful and healing it could be. We also talked about how it can be really intense at times. So I do feel like it's important to give like just some more fast facts, but just like she said, or do your own research. But basically, for anyone questioning kind of the sciencey bit behind it, like we said the name, it's a tryptamine. So it's a substitute of tryptamine. Basically, what that means is that a tryptamine is a shared feature that melatonin and serotonin have. So that is why like it's acting on both those. Like when you're doing DMT, you're getting the same like you're getting like it's hitting the neuromodulators that are melatonin, serotonin, bufotenin. It's a psychedelic, and psychedelics like DMT, psilocybin, and others. If you do it, inhale it like you smoke it, it's usually 5 to 15 minutes of a high. It's also that way if you inject it.
They did not even know you could inject
I'm gonna go ahead and
that.
clarify. I didn't know either, so I researched into that because I was like, there's no way there are DMT junkies shooting up. And it was not that case. It was in the medical sense. They were giving people injections, IM injections and IV. They were giving it testing to see what would happen. So that's how they have that reference. And then orally is ayahuasca, which is 3+ hours. If you eat DMT by itself, you're not going to get the effects. Save your coin. Just so y'all know. For it to be adjusted orally, because it's like 3 hours, that sounds like more fun. Trust me, you're not. If you just eat the little DMT, it's not gonna do it. It has to be with I have it written right here with an MAOI or RIMA, which is a type of. They can be in medicine. It can be in herbs. There's different foods that have.
Isn't that the root that it's mixed with the ayahuasca?
Yes. So they mix it with the vine. The vine has the MAOI that basically.
And then the DMT root. Okay.
Yeah, it makes it like start to like break down whatever, like because you have a certain level
chemistry.
Yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit. But
anyway,
it's the fact
that I know multiple friends that know how to extract their own DMT.
Yeah, like it's
all you little chemist friends that I know.
Yeah, it's like if y'all know,
more power to you.
Let's see. Yeah, or ayahuasca is. You can do ayahuasca without DMT. That's something I learned today. I didn't know that. I thought ayahuasca was always DMT with the vine, but it actually is not. But to get DMT in an oral form, it is like considered ayahuasca, and you have to mix it. Blah blah blah. When she was talking about the mushrooms and how it like had like this profound like effect on her, what maybe it was pretty ironic to me because I wrote this here was that the active chemical in psilocybin mushrooms are structurally similar to DMT.
Oh.
So they have a very similar structure, which makes sense at why they're hitting the tryptamines, and it's similar in some ways, like effects, like kind of thing. I feel like that's why when you do shrooms, like you're like, I feel like I'm one with things. Whereas like when you do DMT, and it's like a lower amount at least, you're like, I feel one with the universe, all the vibration. Whereas like when you do shrooms, like I'm one with everything around me,
right?
Because it's like the smaller,
the smaller scale of it.
hit. Yeah, I already talked about different things that it's being used to treat. Look into it. It's actually really fucking cool. The more I research into
Look
it,
into the study that they're doing in New Orleans. That's super cool. They're doing some really amazing things, trailblazing, groundbreaking, whatever you want to call it.
Eye-opening. Yeah, they're holding their, I mean, this isn't in America, but I was watching this thing, I think it was in France, but they're hoping that with it by like 2025, like you could get approved to go into the clinic and get like the
have a trip.
Yes, and like do it like in clinic. Like, and that's their goal. For like a mental health facility, something like that would be so crazy. Imagine
Can you
do that,
imagine the revolution?
That's what I'm saying. Wild shit. The only
if you go to the mental hospital for a week,
yes,
a breakdown, and they're like, let's do a DMT.
Let's give it a go.
Like not censored, but like monitored. Session.
Like with like therapy or someone like talking you through.
Psychiatrist, whatever.
My god. So that's what they're like things they're working on.
Life changing.
Literally.
Bring a Reiki master in for that session.
That would be. God dang it. Yeah, for real. The only things I really have. She kind of talked about how the environment was really important. Ironically, when I was gonna say when I looked it up. Everywhere it says how set and setting was way more important than the quality of your DMT, which is crazy to think. That
I guess if it's DMT, it's DMT.
Yeah, I guess because it's it's the thought there. When it comes to dosing stuff, the only thing I will say is that it did warn me online. The MAOI and RIMAs, they have that in like there's like naturally in food, different plants, and which is how they do
foods can enhance
that. But also, if you were on, there are medications that are made that are MAOIs and RIMAs. They warn you, be very careful with DMT, because if you, like, for instance, it said online that if you're on like whatever MAOI like medication that's like 120 milligrams a day, then DMT at 10 milligrams hits you the way it would at 25, and 25 is considered like a good
hero dose.
Well, it said 10 milligrams a good start, 25 to 30 is a moderate dose, 40 plus is a heavy dose. But so if you are on any type of medications, they're antidepressants. So any type of antidepressant that is followed under a MAOI and RIMA are the specific ones that have like make it stronger. Some antidepressants make it like less. So some people, they take a little more to feel it. But those two specifically, just in case, if you're on antidepressants and you're considering doing TD, you should look into that, because one, you'll save your coin, but two, you can start small, because they do recommend, if you've never done it, start small. So it's
like the opposite with DMT as it is for like shrooms and acid.
Basically, only with these two though, only with these two specific types of antidepressants, the MAOI and the RIMA. So like SSRI doesn't affect it the same way. But these two specific ones, and there's like a long list of medications that are listed on it. I was looking at it earlier, but those two, because what MAOI and RIMAs do is they take up the natural, I wish I had the exact word of what it is, the natural whatever in your body. Like we have a certain level of this certain chemical that we can take before DMT will work. So like if you eat DMT,
so it's the excess of that chemical.
Basically, so it's like if you eat DMT, you have a natural amount of like immunity to it, because you have a certain capacity you can have, so you won't trip. But if you're on one of these, that capacity doesn't exist, so you're going to trip hard because you're not coming up from anything. So very fascinating.
No, that is very cool. Yeah, so a couple little scientific facts about DMT, but honestly, if you're considering doing it, do your research. Not necessarily set your intention, but like prepare yourself for it, and make sure you're set and your setting is really good energy. Cleanse the space beforehand. Maybe have someone with you that helps you feel grounded, keeps you comfortable, just like Deb did with Dawn. Just
treat yourself if you're going to be your trip sitting for your friend.
Yeah.
Because if you're looking at it that way, you're not going to have your intention is, no matter what happens, I got you. We're going to get through this trip together. It's going to be a good trip. It's going to be about, it's like, we got this. I'm taking care of you.
Right.
And keep that constant in mind. It's like, it might be a beautiful, wonderful experience. It might be kind of intense. It might be kind of traumatic in the moment, but know that whatever happens, like, you got this. There's nothing you're being handed that you can't handle.
Right.
The universe is not going to work in that way. It's just energy. It's not going to work that way. It doesn't correlate.
Yeah. You're not going to come out of it fucked up. If anything, you'll come out of it better.
Yeah. It's like you might just be overwhelmed at the information. Like I said at first, your human mind only has a certain capacity.
Yeah, but you've been overwhelmed before. You've had crazy moments. You've gotten through them. You'll be fine.
Sometimes you've made mistakes, blackout drunk, and 2 weeks later you process what you did and you came to. Just look at it like that.
You're just talking from experience.
It happens to the best of us.
Oh, and on that note, drink responsibly, guys.
Do everything responsibly.
Take your DMT responsibly. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. We hope you guys enjoyed Deb's story. I know we did. And we'll see you guys next time on the 25th episode.
On our quarter episode.
Quarter episode.
25.